Well, that was depressing. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken get shut out 2-0 against the Ottawa Senators. And yeah, I know I'm not wearing the jersey, and doesn't necessarily that I'm going to go on a angry rant or anything like I usually do when I'm not wearing it. It's just that they didn't show up tonight, and I didn't really feel like that deserved wearing the same jersey as a team that seemed like they were disinterested in playing the game. In fact, it was a game where Ottawa was coming into it on the second half of a back-to-back, and yet it was the Kraken that looked like the team that had just played the night previous and got beat by one of the worst teams in the NHL 4-2. No, it was actually the Senators that just got beat in Columbus the previous night. The Kraken had a day off after actually a decent game in Toronto, and they still came out flat and really didn't show any effort until late in the third period, at which point the game was pretty much already over. And it's not just the last game that went poorly for these Senators either, as in their last 3 games leading into this one against the Kraken, all 3 regulation losses and not particularly close, they got outscored by a combined score of 14-5, which did include a 5-0 shutout, but regardless, they were not playing very well on defense to say the least, giving up 5-5 and then 4 goals, and also weren't offering much on offense the other way, with just 5 across 3 games. And yet here they are against the Kraken, once again on the second half of a back-to-back with travel from Columbus, looking like, well, still not a great team offensively. They only had the 2 goals, and even at that, one was off a turnover and the other was a miscommunication between Decord and Alexiak. They really didn't have a ton of great offensive looks. In fact, probably their best one, which Decord came up with a huge save on, was off of Ellie Tolvanen's stick on a 2-on-1 rush as Tolvanen tried to break up the pass. Either way, it wasn't an offensive masterclass by any means by the Senators, but it was enough because defensively, the Kraken made them look like they were the Tampa Bay Lightning from their back-to-back cup runs, or Boston from last year, keeping everything to the outside, really not allowing the Kraken to get much of anything going on offense, blocking shot after shot, and not letting anything happen up around their net. Sure, Forsberg does have a pretty good stat line by the end of the night in net for them, but he honestly didn't have to work that hard until the last couple of minutes there when the Kraken did eventually pull Decord for the 6-on-5. And yes, credit where it's due, Ottawa did play well defensively in this game, but the Kraken kind of just let them do it. They didn't really challenge them towards the middle of the ice in the offensive end whatsoever in this game, and seemed content with just passing the puck around the outside when they were set up in the offensive end, and they spent some time in the offensive end, but they just refused to shoot the puck or get anybody to the middle of the ice to have any chance to deflect a puck, cause a screen, or chaos out in front of the net that could lead to a goal when they had to take the shots from the outside. So yeah, in that way, it basically looked like that inaugural team that was just content with shooting pucks from the blue line and hoping the goaltender makes a mistake, which in this case, he didn't. So, I don't know, on the whole with this game, I guess maybe the frustrating part of it, or one of the frustrating parts of it, there are plenty of frustrating things about this game, but maybe one of the big ones is that it almost felt like a metaphor for the season, at least so far anyway, for the Kraken, where they have chances to get things going, they get set up in the offensive end, chances to make something happen and get into the game, and just never really show the effort or desire to push it over the top and make something actually happen. In the end, just kind of coasting through this game and letting it happen to them without showing that real effort and drive like we saw from the team last year. And it's kind of been that way this season, where every now and then there's that little burst, that one good game that gives you that little spark of hope that they're finally going to get things going in the season and be the team that we all expected coming into it. And in the end, they just look half-hearted, lackluster, and really like they don't have any drive to really make anything happen. And it's really not even the same issues that we saw with this team in the inaugural season, which, to be fair, was going worse at this point in the season than it is right now. And they did have some games like this where they just looked disinterested toward the back half of the season once it had really gotten away from them. But at least through the first half of the season, it more so with that team was that they almost tried too hard at times and just didn't have the chemistry. They couldn't connect passes, they couldn't make those stretched transitions happen, and then the offensive end, once they got there, they would pinch too much into the end trying to make something happen offensively and end up with odd man rushes going back the other way. So, you know, still not super fun to watch as a fan of the team, but at least for the most part anyway, it did seem like with that inaugural team, the effort was there, even if it was 5 individual efforts more often than not, rather than 5 guys working as a team together on the ice. And yeah, that did still lead to Grubauer having to do way more work and harder work than he probably should have. But I don't know, at least if they were going to lose that way, it made it more bearable to watch them lose rather than something like this where they just don't seem interested in really trying to win in the first place. Let me know what you think in the comments, though. Maybe I'm totally off base. This is pretty fresh. I basically just turned off the game and started recording because, well, it really didn't seem like there was that much more to review by looking at the replay since the Kraken pretty much did nothing at their end of the ice, and I can pretty easily remember the 2 goals that went in against them. At least the good news for the Kraken coming into the game, well, actually, there's kind of split news for the Kraken coming into the game, is Tanev is back in this game for the Kraken, which is nice, but we did find out that Schwartz is going to be out for probably at least 6 weeks, which is definitely not what you want to see from a team that then goes out and gets shut out by one of the worst teams in the Eastern Conference, which would still be right in the middle of the pack in the West, but that's a whole different issue. With all that said, though, we might as well get to the recap part of this game. After all, Kraken R&R does stand for recap and reaction, and I guess this time I went reaction then recap. There's still not a ton to recap about this game. Again, the Kraken, from their standpoint, pretty much coasted through this game, like I've already said, and the Senators did still kind of look like a team on the second half of a back-to-back. Certainly weren't able to get a ton going offensively, and defensively, all they really had to do was stand there in the middle of the ice because the Kraken were just content with staying on the outside and not making them work all that hard to move around, just shooting pucks off of Ottawa Senators players in the defensive end. Anyway, the game starts off, the Kraken get the first few shots off on net, so it looks like it's going to be fine, but then things do even out. The Kraken get a power play, nothing really happens on that power play till the very end. They do get a chance, but they don't score on it. The Senators end up with a power play where the Kraken do actually get a couple of pretty good chances shorthanded, aren't able to score, and then as that power play comes to an end, the puck ends up back down in the Kraken end of the ice. Beniers gets a hold of it, but of course, unfortunately, bad luck strikes the Kraken once again, as Beniers circles with that puck right by the side of the Kraken net, and while he has the puck right next to Decord, he blows a tire, loses an edge, goes to the ice, and the puck slides away from him, right out into the crease, where it goes right to Joseph. He picks it up, outweights Decord, and then throws it into the net, as Beniers also tries to get back to block it. Really, neither one of them had a chance, and it's 1-0 Senators. A 1-0 lead that they would carry into the second period, and then through 2 power plays that they got in the first half of the second period, both of which the Kraken kill off, so I guess at least the Kraken kill did pretty well in this game. In general, though, the second period wasn't all that interesting. Not a ton really happens in it, other than just after the second power play for the Senators of the period, the Kraken have another bad defensive miscue in their end of the ice as Decord goes behind the net to play a puck that's rimming around the boards along behind it. It does actually go around the boards, not like the game in Florida where he did that and then it bounced weirdly out in front of the net. It does make it to Decord. He stops it and then leaves it for Alexiak, but Alexiak doesn't get that memo. He doesn't go for it, and instead it's the Senators who get to it first, and 2 passes later, it's into the back of the net before Decord has a chance to really get fully back in front of it, and it's 2-0 Senators. And it would stay 2-0 Senators into the third period, and obviously all the way throughout it, since you've already seen the final score. The Kraken do actually make a decent effort, at least statistically anyway, in the third period. They get a ton of shots on goal, in the end ending up with somewhere in the mid-30s in shots. Although, once again, not a ton of them are dangerous. Even on the 2 power plays they get in this period, they at least had a couple of looks where mostly McCann and also a couple for Bjorkstrand, where they'll have Dunn pass it out to open ice and then they skate up, try and pick a spot and fire off a shot. Often they were blocked in, a couple of them just missed the mark in general. The Kraken don't score there. We go to the final few minutes where they get 6-on-5, and in 6-on-5 they do get a couple of pretty good looks, finally looking like a team that's ready to start trying to get into this game. Unfortunately, you're now in the last 2.5 minutes of a game where you're down 2, so it's just not enough. And a couple of pretty nice saves here at the end, as well as a nice block, finish off the shutout, and the Kraken fall 2-0. And so, once again in the end with this game, the Kraken just pretty much didn't bother playing it for the most part. I mean, they did basically by technicality. They showed up to get their paychecks, but that's about it. Really, even outside of the context of where the Senators were at coming into this game, the Kraken just didn't play a game that was probably good enough even to beat the Sharks in this one. So they do now put themselves in a spot where they really need to pick up the last win of this road trip in Montreal against an even worse Habs team. And if they don't get that one, I mean, it's still not mathematically over for quite a while, but they would need to have total reawakening or rethinking of how they're doing things to get things turned around and just flip it 180. I mean, honestly, at this point, they're already kind of in a position where they need to have a pretty extended winning streak to get back into things in the standings. Sure, they're not that far out of a wild card spot, but that's only because the rest of the Western Conference has been terrible, and there are going to be a couple of teams throughout the rest of the season that will go on those winning streaks to claim those spots and at least get to somewhere in the 90s in points. I don't think that 100 points is going to be a wild card spot this season. I mean, it would be if someone could get there, but I don't think either wild card team is going to be in the hundreds this year. So somewhere in the 90s probably does get you there. But at this point, for the Kraken to get there, they will need to string a few wins together. And as far as that's concerned, the Kraken already have a team behind them in the division, which there are not many of, that are doing just that, with the Oilers, who have now strung 4 wins together and could pass the Kraken with a couple of more games in hand that they have if they continue that. So Yeah, it's getting out of hand pretty quickly for this team, especially when they're losing games like this one and the one in Chicago against opponents that they very much should be able to beat. I mean, I say that they should be able to beat them with the way we know they're capable of playing. Unfortunately, they just really have not done that more than a small handful of games this season. Anyway, aside from all that, to finally wrap things up with this game, as for Kraken 3 stars, which if you do want to be a part of helping decide Kraken 3 stars, or in a case like this one where there aren't any, then you can help support the channel a little bit more than you already are through the link down below to go to Patreon. Other than that, let me know what you think about this game. Again, no stars in this one. I mean, Gord had a decent game. Decord, I probably would have given a star to if it wasn't for pretty much giving Ottawa a goal there on the second one. Otherwise, though, let me know what you think of this game down in the comments section below. Hopefully, the Kraken will actually show up on Monday and play that one against the Canadians, and if they don't, well, we might just have to resign ourselves to this team being not a playoff team this season. Again, far from mathematically eliminated, but it would take a streak of wins. Other than that, if you've made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below to help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. I mean, I could use something good happening tonight. But anyway, as always, stay safe out there, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.